Hey guys, in this two-part video, I am building a mini TV console, and that's to practice for a larger one I'll be building later this year. So let me take you along on how I did it. So I'm using these TSO product parallel guides, and these allow me to have consistent rips whenever I am needing to dimension the plywood. I would have used my table saw, but the problem was I didn't really have it set up, and I didn't want to deal with all the noise and space. And I find this method to be pretty accurate for the most part. Whenever you are using a track saw accessory, it's always a good idea to clamp it down. That way things don't move on you and change things up. Otherwise, you could have pieces of varying widths, and that can add up over a project. So after I complete all the rip cuts with my parallel guides, I like to take the wood and to stack them together just to confirm that they're the same width. And in this case, they're very, very close, maybe off by 1/3 of a millimeter, which is totally workable. So typically when I'm cross-cutting under 12 inches, I do tend to use my miter saw. The clamp that Festool uses is super quick and easy, and the blade produces an amazing result. There's basically no chipping on the veneer, so it's much faster to use my miter saw than a sled or something else like that. So these are going to be the side of the console. Now a quick tip is this. Instead of using a pencil to mark up your plywood, especially pre-finished, just use a little bit of tape, and that way you can peel it off afterward and you have a lot less cleanup to worry about. So for cutting up the sides, I'm going to make an initial cut, which is going to be slightly longer than what I need. And in a moment, you're going to see me place that smaller piece on top of the second piece. And what I'm doing here is I'm making that final cut. And the reason why I do this is I want to ensure that these pieces are perfect. If they're not perfect, well, that can throw my entire piece out of square, and I don't want that. So I like doing this method where I can ensure that the pieces are equal widths. Now that the plywood is cut to dimension, I need to add dominoes. Now a little trick here is I'm actually using this piece of plywood as a bridge clamp. That way I can have these two knocked out at once, but also I don't want to mar my plywood. And if you put the clamp on the plywood directly, it can dent it, which would not look good. While I do like using pocket holes a lot, the problem with them is they can cause things to drift and shift, and that's not really good in this cabinet scenario. The domino, on the other hand, helps to bring things into alignment, and it's not like you can turn off your brain. You do need to think about how you're doing things, or you can mess things up. Trust me, I've been there many times. So if you haven't noticed, it's a different day, and you get busy with life. And so the thing I love about the morning is coming back to a project, and all I have to do is check the dry fit out, make sure everything is, coming together nicely. And when it does, I can move on to the next part. And I love this part because I'm finally seeing the outline of the project coming together. I think because I'm filming this to show you guys, it takes so much longer and it feels like it's such an effort to create this, but it's really a joy in the end when you put that last piece on and it's like, here it is, it's coming together. New day, new task, and now I need to make the grooves for the sliding door. Now, one little tip is make sure that your clamps are low profile, otherwise your track saw can run into them, and that can really mess up a project if you have to stop mid-project to readjust your rails. Here you can see I'm using my Paolini pocket rule. I'm making the offset with it, and I use it all the time. I do have an affiliate link below if you guys are interested in getting one. It's just one of those things that has so many uses, and I use it all throughout this build. Typically, I don't set my track saw like this, but for making a rough depth where it's not crucial, this works just fine. My initial thought was to use a track saw for everything, and that was a great idea until I realized that a track saw is not the best tool for everything if you can avoid it. Don't get me wrong, my track saw is great, but for making 1/2-inch grooves, it's not the best idea. Soon I realized that a router was going to be much better. And on another note, I should have thought about the placement of the grooves in relation to the dominoes because I almost had a problem. Thankfully, everything worked out, but it was a really close call and it limited the depth of the groove, which I wish I could have had deeper, but the piece still came out functional, so it's not a problem, but it could have been. So for the sliding door panels, I'm adding a 20mm offset on each side. And then I'm actually adding 2 finger holes for each panel. That way things can slide. For the finger holes, I'm using a 35mm bit, which is basically 1.5 inches. And I went with that because, I don't know, it just felt right. You know how it goes. And I use a little backer so I don't go through my worktop, which would be bad. So in wrapping up part 1 of the project, I need to figure out how I want to do the base. I want to have legs, I want my base underneath. So I'd love to know your guys' opinion regarding this. But overall, I'm really happy with the techniques that I've learned from this.